boys and girls, and welcome to another episode of the Concession Stand, brought to you by the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and we are completing the Barbenheimer weekend with this review. We've already reviewed Barbie. Now we're going into Oppenheimer, the new film directed by Christopher Nolan, starring Cillian Murphy as Oppenheimer. And as I stated before, this was a big weekend because these are two big movies for two different audiences. And after seeing these two films, I would rival to say they aren't for two different audiences. This was a really awesome movie, Oppenheimer. This was a if you're a fan of biopics, if you love history, if you love talkative movies, and I'm saying talkative because this is dialogue driven. There's no action in this movie, despite the fact that it's centered around the creation of the first nuclear weapon. And I am so happy that I went to go see this in the theater. Christopher Nolan, who wrote and directed this film, we all know his history. In case you don't know his filmography, Christopher Nolan has directed such classics as the Dark Knight trilogy. You know, Batman Begins, Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar, Inception, which is one of my favorite movies ever made, The Prestige, it's so many more. And his filmography is a hodgepodge of just greatness. This man is an awesome filmmaker. Love his take on properties. Just going back to Batman and the way he handled the Batman franchise, him and Christian Bale, with those three films out of that trilogy, was done in a grounded way that we never saw in a superhero film before. Up to that point, we've seen them since, different takes on superhero films, but it really started with Christopher Nolan. He didn't go into the fantastical element of the superhero or comic book characters, and I love that take for Batman. Interstellar, this science fiction space opera, yet grounded in a way. Inception, as I stated before, one of my favorite movies ever made. This science fiction again film, but done in a way to where it's not like a CGI fest. This could easily went the CGI type route with going into different levels of dreams and all this other stuff. It wasn't that. It was still grounded. And now he's tackling this biopic about somebody who was pivotal in our history, in American history, in global history. And it was grounded. And it needed to be grounded. And once again, no special effects. There were no computer generated images in this film at all. There's not one CGI shot, which actually I kind of pushed back on that because I read that before I went to go see the film. And when I saw the film, I saw two shots that I believe had to be CGI. There was no way that wasn't a CGI shot, but it's so quick and so small. It's like, whatever. It really didn't matter. But the totality of this film, it is practical. And oh my God, what a movie. Playing Oppenheimer, the lead character in this film, is Cillian Murphy from Peaky Blinders, 28 Days Later, even Batman Begins. He's worked with Christopher Nolan before, but he tackles this role as J. Robert Oppenheimer and is supported by, I would say, half of Hollywood in this movie. I'm sitting there watching this movie and was just amazed by the amount of talent in this film. Cillian Murphy, who is the star, This is his movie. Uh, his wife is played by Emily Blunt. You have Matt Damon. You have Robert Downey Jr., Florence Pugh, Josh Hartnett, Casey Affleck, Remy Malek, Kenneth Branagh, and that's just a few of the actors in this film, and they all did, and except whoever cast this movie, uh, they were underpaid in this film. Let's start off with the cast. Let's discuss the cast of this film, starting off with Oppenheimer himself, Cillian Murphy, who plays J. Robert Oppenheimer. Cillian Murphy, I enjoy him in everything. He is very underrated to me. I have been a fan of his since the first time I saw him in 28 Days Later, the zombie film that Danny Boyle made a few years back. And ever since then, I've been in love with this guy. Sunshine is another example of an awesome performance by his. But this one here, I strongly believe it's Academy Award worthy. I'm talking win, not just nomination, win. He held this film. It was his film. And Cillian Murphy performance was so powerful in the sense that he had to display his excitement for creating this new bomb, for using his knowledge of physics towards the creation of this bomb, and then to switch to the regret and the guilt and the pain from the creation of this bomb and the consequences of what he just did, what him and his team did, because they basically gave a loaded weapon to a child. It's like giving a handgun to a baby, and a baby gonna play with it until they kill somebody or themselves. And that's basically what he did, and he had to come to grips with that. And the pain in his face, the way he acted through his emotion, his eyes, sometimes without saying a word, it was just powerful. Now, I didn't follow much of Oppenheimer. I know a little bit about it, me being a history buff. I know a little bit about him and his backstory. And they didn't touch in on a lot of his history that I know of, but yet and still, they did tackle a lot of things that was prevalent to the story. And I'm moving so fast, I've got to give the synopsis of Oppenheimer, in case you don't know. Oppenheimer it chronicles the life of said character as he was part of the Manhattan Project, which was helping develop the first nuclear weapons, and this was the story of that. And so, yeah, Cillian Murphy, awesome job as the title character. Emily Blunt as his wife, I liked her performance. Hers is probably, and I hate to say it like this, but hers was probably the weakest performance in the whole film. And it's not to say that she gave a bad performance. It was just, I didn't connect with her character, and she wasn't given much in this role, but the little time that she was in there, she was doing a good job. But a lot of things that were happening, I didn't understand what was happening with her character. I enjoyed what she was doing, but me sitting there not knowing the history and all this here, I was kind of like, okay, why is she acting like this? Why is she in this mood or whatever? You kind of put it together, but in the film is not really developed well. And I was kind of thrown off by that, but I enjoy Emily Blunt. I love the scene towards the end of the movie when she was given her deposition at this hearing. Now that whatever feelings I had before was quickly wiped away with that scene from Emily Blunt. Emily Blunt showed why she is a beast of an actress in that scene. Loved her in that scene. Matt Damon as General Graves. or Groves, should I say, loved Matt Damon here, man. I was like, man, because Matt Damon was playing a hole. he was, he really was. He was, and I haven't seen him play it like this, but I enjoyed him in this film so much, you know, because him being a military man, him following orders, yet having so much respect for Oppenheimer, even though he his superiors didn't really want him to deal with Oppenheimer, but he knew Oppenheimer can get the job done, and because of the respect he had for him, and he grew even more respect for him as they were working on this Manhattan project. And I loved the progression of that character. Florence Pugh as Jean Tallock. Love Florence Pugh. Love Florence Pugh. I love her even more in this movie. Uh, when we were leaving the theater, my wife said, "Well, I guess Florence Pugh. Uh, I guess a lot of guys gonna go see the movie now because of Florence Pugh in this movie." I said, "Yeah, if I'd have known that, I would have went and seen it earlier." Well, the thing we was talking about, Florence Pugh is naked for about 80% of the scenes that she's in in this movie. And she is naked, And I'm like, okay, let's go. But besides that, and what I was telling my wife, I said it jokingly, but it was the God honest truth. Not only was she naked, but she was acting while she was naked. And that that takes skill. That takes some real skill. But in all honesty, she gave an awesome performance. And as this character, or as this real life person who, the one thing that I was kind of, well, I'll go over that when I give a summarized version of the film. But as far as her performance is concerned, I enjoyed her performance. But the one that I think will finally give the devil his due, so to speak, will be Robert Downey Jr. I think Robert Downey Jr. will finally get an Academy Award this year in his portrayal of Louis Strauss. And man, I loved it. This reminded you that Robert Downey Jr. is more than Tony Stark, Iron Man. He is more than that. He actually was an Academy Award nominated, multiple Academy Award nominated actor before he put on the Iron Man suit. And this was just a reminder of that. And man, he gave to be the quote unquote villain of this piece. Great job. Great job. I so happy that we got this performance from Robert Downey Jr. You know what I'm saying? Because for the past 20 years, all we can think of is Iron Man. It's him as Tony Stark. And something needed to set him apart from that. He's done with all that, allegedly. And so it's good to see him move on to this type of role and do it justice. Oh, great performance by him. Moving on to our director here, Christopher Nolan. I don't know, what can I say about Christopher Nolan other than the fact he's a genius. The man knows how to make movies. He knows how to keep your interest. This is a 3-hour long film. 3 hours with no action. No type of well, there was sex in it. They had a couple of sex scenes, but other than that, it was no action. I guess you could count that as an action scene. But honestly, it was no action. This was a dialogue-driven biopic about a story that I would say 75 to 80% of Americans know already. I don't know about the rest of the world, but this is a story that everybody know. Everybody know who Oppenheimer is or heard of Oppenheimer. So this isn't a new thing. This isn't going to cause any tension, but it did. The way he built up tension for that test, when they test the bomb for the first time, And we all know, sitting there, like, what's going to happen. We know the end result here. You know, but there was still tension. And he built it up to the point I'm sitting up in my chair like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And I know what's going to happen. You know what? It's crazy how this man worked it, how he's constructed this film. Now, at the beginning of this movie, I was kind of thrown off at the way he was telling the story because we was bouncing on around like 3 different time periods. And I was kind of confused at first. I'm like, okay, where are we going to settle at here? How is he going to tell this story? Because we're starting off here. Now we're going over here. Now we're about 30 years over here. And I'm like, oh my God, what is this? was he loaded? Was he high when he was editing this movie? And then it kind of mellowed out. And once it mellowed out and once the whole film played out, it all came together and made sense. And I slapped myself in the face and I was like, why am I doubting? Why am I doubting Christopher Nolan? The man knows how to make a movie. The production design was amazing. The cinematography was amazing. There's really not too many flaws here. Other than the fact there's the musical choice. And I love Ludwig Göransson, I believe his name is. He did the score for Black Panther. He won an Oscar for that. He did the score for Creed. He did the score for The Mandalorian. The dude knows how to make a score. I loved all his scores, and I didn't dislike his score. It's just at points, like the music didn't fit the scene. Like it was a couple of scenes where the music just didn't fit that particular scene. And I don't know if that was his choice or Christopher Nolan's choice, because we all know that Christopher Nolan loves to play with sound. You notice when I went through his filmography and how much I loved it, I purposely left off Tenet. And Tenet, the sound and the music in that movie where you couldn't hear the dialogue, it was drained out of this ear and all this, which he did on purpose to kind of, I don't know, keep the audience disoriented, which it was successful because I didn't know what was going on, and I still don't know what was going on in that movie. But it just didn't work in a couple of areas with the score. But overall, it was pretty good. Going back to the scene not the scene, but the scene with Florence Pugh's character, with her suicide. Now this is fact that she was died by suicide, but they hinted at the fact that there was foul play involved. Now I did read somewhere years ago when I was going down that rabbit hole about Oppenheimer and looking up stuff and all this here, that there was some type of accusations that foul play was involved, but it was never proven. Now, same thing here. They hinted to it, but they never went back to it. You know, they never touched in on it again. It was like one little scene that they kind of flashed that something nefarious took place, but they didn't elaborate on it. Now, I look past it because this is the Oppenheimer movie. It's not Florence Pugh's movie, so I didn't really let it bother me too much, but it was like okay, if you're going to open that door, let's walk through it. Don't just open the door and walk off, you know. That's the way I was feeling at that. But it didn't really distract from the movie. It was just like, you know, something in my mind that kind of bugged me for a second or two. But anyways, that was really my only flaw in the movie. Other than the fact that it is 3 hours long, and I can honestly say I felt it midway through. I was feeling it. I was like, oh my God, this is pretty long. Now, at the same time, I enjoyed everything in it. There's nothing in this film I can say well, if they cut this scene, cut that scene, and that'll shave off 15, 20 minutes from it, it'll been a better film. It wasn't that. Everything in here fit. Everything in here worked. There wasn't any long, drawn out takes, of dead air or nothing like that. It was just like, I just felt it. It was pretty long. And I guess the reason for that was because there was no action in it. The only action I guess you can classify as action was their test of the bomb and when that went off. And that really wasn't action. It was just a real tense scene. And then after that, it really wasn't much to get into, get invested in as far as the story is concerned, because up to that point you had spent about 2 hours 2 hours with them figuring out how to make this bomb, how not to destroy the world by igniting the atmosphere with this bomb, by being off by just one or two molecules or one or two fractions there that would have just destroyed us all. And so all that was interesting, until they tested it and like, okay, we got success. And then it kind of went down a different path. Now, granted, it was an interesting story, but it felt like two different movies. It was the development of the bomb, and then it was the aftermath with Oppenheimer, where I guess you could say the government turned their backs on. And, that was like two separate stories, and honestly, for the last hour, I was like, okay, is this where they're going to stop? Or is this where they're going to stop? Is this where they're going to stop? I was trying to figure out where's the end point here? How long are we going to drag this out? Because honestly, I thought going in, we were just going to get to the development of the bomb, and that was that, which would have been fine if they would have stopped it there. And I didn't hate what we got in the final hour of the film. It was just kind of, at that point, it felt like they had about 2 or 3 stop points that they just ran through the stop sign, ran the red light on. So I don't know. But overall, honestly, it was a good film. It wasn't a masterpiece, was what I read from a lot of critics. I don't give it a masterpiece. I still feel that Inception is his best film, in my humble opinion. But it's up there. It was awesome to watch. I really, really loved the story. And this will probably be the first Academy Award worthy film of the year right now. This is the bar. So everything that comes out after this is 9 times out of 10, it has to meet Oppenheimer level of goodness in order to be considered for an Academy Award, in my humble opinion. And that goes for direction by Christopher Nolan, leading actor for Cillian Murphy, best supporting actor for Robert Downey Jr., best supporting actress for Florence Pugh, and best picture for Oppenheimer. That's my predictions right now. It's just July. We still got 5 months left in the year, so we shall see. But I really, really enjoyed it. Oppenheimer, which is currently in theaters, gets a letter grade of an A-. I think it is one of the best films of the year, and it's going to be a high bar for a lot of these films to hurdle in order to top it as far as quality. But that's just my humble opinion. Now, if you want to relegate it to the weekend, this big Barbenheimer weekend where it was the battle between Barbie and Oppenheimer. I don't know the numbers yet. The numbers haven't came out yet, who won the box office. But at this point, I don't care. I will say this. Both films I went to see this weekend, both theaters were sold out. It was sold out for Barbie. It was sold out for Oppenheimer. So this is going to be a huge moneymaker for Hollywood as a whole. So I don't know who's going to win. I think at the end of the day, we won. These were two great films. I enjoyed Barbie and I enjoyed Oppenheimer. And this was just an example of you don't have to choose. If it's something you want to see, if there's two movies out there that come out the same weekend and you really want to see them both, find a way to go see them both. I found the way to go see them both, and I am ecstatic that I did. I am so happy that I was able to watch these films on opening weekend. I would like to know, did you watch Oppenheimer this weekend? And how did you feel? You can let me know by email. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also look me up on Twitter at KB Radio Network, and on other social media platforms. Just look up the KB Radio Network. Don't forget about YouTube either, people. Look for the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube. Subscribe and like this video if you don't mind as well. 5 stars, reviews, and sharing this show. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of the Christopher Nolan directed biopic Oppenheimer. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, week, evening, morning, whenever it is you're currently listening to the show. I want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love everybody. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.